actually started mostly in the kitchen and tabletop space, and it was actually one of our customers, a customer that has a independent store in Canada,
Okay.
that suggested, "Hey, you're in the sustainability space, and I know a lot of people who compost. You should make a compost bin." And she had returned to us multiple times with this idea, and eventually we just said, "Okay, like we're developing a new group of products for this new for another line. Let's add a compost bin in." Um, Funnily enough, she never purchased this compost bin, which is always the kicker with this story. But um, what did end up happening is that we came into the market with a compost bin exactly at the right moment, where composting became very popular. And our goal was to look at all the compost bins that are out there and ask, okay, so why do people not put them on their countertop? And what can we do to make sure that people do want to do that? So of course the smell, which we have the filter for, the aesthetics, um, which we've worked on quite a bit in order to make sure that people really are going to proudly display it. It's a conversation piece that I think helps the proliferation of the idea of composting. People come to your house, they see it on the countertop, ask, why is your countertop being dominated by this thing? Um, and then you can explain composting to them, and maybe they too will attempt it.
I know another partnership that was really important was that you partnered with the kitchen.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Personally, I'm a big fan of product development. That's my favorite part of the job, I would say. Um, we had already the kind of the shapes complete for our line, and they wanted to pick their own colors that would represent them the best. So the process is actually pretty simple, especially when you have a team on the other side that's, energetic, has a lot of great ideas, and makes decisions quickly. So we had sent samples over. They had given us a few colors to try. We sample those colors, and then we go through the process of seeing whether or not um, the samples we created were worth their while, and luckily they were. So we actually do this process. We've done this process with a few other people in the past, and it's one of our favorite things because we feel like somebody can put their mark on our product. We can bring our product closer to their customers or users, and they can kind of put their mark on something that's really special and different.
That's really creative and a nice way to have that iterative product development that is not one and done, that when you do these different partnerships, you get to see the different outcomes.
Absolutely.
You did mention at the start too, when you're developing this material, the Astrik material that then went into these products, that you were very thoughtful as to the different pieces. And part of that is making it biodegradable, which I think is really, really fascinating and really important for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah. So biodegradability is a very tricky subject. It's really, really complex, and there's a lot of caveats. So we try to be as clear as possible with those caveats. We obviously do not want to greenwash. We want to tell people what we are and what we aren't. So the situation with biodegradability is that um, PLA, which is what our product is mainly made from, is biodegradable um, in particular environments. Now, it is biodegradable in all environments, except for there's certain environments where nothing is biodegradable, like in a desert, for example, where there's no bacteria to break things down. Um, but in particular, in the right environments, it is biodegradable, and then it's compostable, which means it biodegrades very quickly under a certain amount of time. That's what it needs to be considered compostable, in industrial settings. So that means that to absolutely properly dispose of the product, you have to find out if your industrial composter in your municipal area will take PLA. So we understand that that is very difficult and very annoying to do. That is why we are working on a program of repatriating a lot of the material to us, where we will take care of that final step. So for now, The advantage is that instead of putting a plastic out there when it's at the end of its life, instead of putting a plastic out there that will last for thousands of years, we're putting a plastic out there that even at the worst case scenario, where it really doesn't go to the right place, it only lasts a few years. When we finally get to the point where we can request the product back, and there is not a huge rush because we're putting this product out there and we're hoping that people are going to be using this for the next decade. So we're gonna, at the end of its life, we'll bring it back here and we will turn it back into soil. And we have a few great plans and ways to do so. But that is the overall picture of what we're trying to do in the long term.
I love that. And I think it really embraces this concept of progress over possibly perfection. And I think that's where so many of us need to operate in terms of sustainability. It's not black and white right now. And to think forward looking, how can we do this?
Yeah, absolutely. We are huge proponents of 1% change over every year. Is a much, much more significant improvement than trying to find that silver bullet and saying not good enough, not good enough. I see that in sustainability. I think we probably lost decades of progress to the attitude of not good enough. It has to be good enough. We have to do something every year that improves. And sometimes those years are going to be quantum leaps forward where we're really, really changing the paradigm. And sometimes those years are going to be, I shortened the production chain by X amount of miles, and therefore I have reduced the carbon that I'm putting into the atmosphere. Both those things are extremely valid and necessary to move forward. I fear that sometimes, and as somebody who's very much in the sustainability space, it sounds very strange to say that I fear that sometimes the regulation around sustainability is forcing us to find the perfect solution, and frankly demotivating enterprises who are trying to find a good solution by saying, well, your solution isn't good enough, so might as well not try.
Mhm.
It's creating a lot of kind of doom and gloom instead of a forward momentum, which is what we really need in order to get what we want. It's truly is actually our guiding star because um, the way we see it is two ways. First of all, we have to meet the customer where they are. Most people can be, let's say, nerdy about like three things in their life and obsessive about three things in their life. And if you're not one of those three things, they're not going to spend the extra money on it, and they're not going to sacrifice pieces of their lives to make it happen. So we have people who are fantastically sustainable in their everyday life, and they will make sacrifices for it. But that is not the majority of the population, and the change has to happen in like the middle 80 to 90% of the population. That's really, they want to do something more. They want to do something positive, but if you don't give them the opportunity to do something positive, then you know, um, they will just choose whatever is the easiest. The other thing, and this is really core to our philosophy, is that the most unsustainable thing that you have is a thing that you don't use. So you can get yourself an absolutely beautiful, let's say a wooden bowl from a managed sustainable forest, fair trade. Everything's absolutely perfect about this wooden bowl. And then you use it and then you realize I have to hand wash it. I have to oil it. So you pull it out during the holidays and then you put it in your cupboard and it just gathers dust. We all have this piece. The question, and it's a tough question to ask, the question is like, why was that tree cut down in the first place? Like the utility I'm getting from that piece, how much is that utility? So the way we see it is we want a product that you can use every single day. You can chuck it in a dishwasher. You can drop it on the floor by mistake. You can throw it in the microwave. Some people don't use any of those things, but the idea is that we hope that the product will be there every day for you for thousands of days. If you're using it for literally every day for thousands of days, while the act of creating something is always, let's say, on the negative sustainability aspect, there's always some cost to creating everything. You are chopping that cost into so much utility that it's worth it. So our job is basically to make sure that cost is as low as possible by using the right materials, the right manufacturing processes, trying to close down the amount of travel the product takes. And on the other aspect, our job is to make sure that you use the material as much as you possibly can. And then essentially the carbon per use cost of the product becomes so infinitesimally low that it was really worthwhile to do.